welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are making some shaker cards using some kind of new products, I guess. So this is a stencil that I actually made myself using my Cricut. I just made a 6x6 square and then put a whole bunch of hearts in there. I wanted to have some stenciling in the background of this card, but I didn't have any stencils or background stamps that met my needs, so I created my own. So I'm going to use just a white lightweight card base. This is from Paper Studio, and I'm going to use a couple of the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks in Cherry and Aegean. I'm making two cards today. These are going to actually be the Valentine's Day cards for my kiddos. This first one is going to be for my son, and then the other one will be for my daughter. So I'm just going to ink blend fairly lightly at this first time. I'm trying to get 3 different spots of this ink. I realized that I left one little heart inside my stencil. It didn't pop out, so I just was peeling that out with my fingers. But I'm going to put 3 different spots of this cherry ink. Because this is a red and almost a green, they are complementary colors, and so when they mix together they will make a mud. So I was trying to be kind of cautious. They almost made a purple, like a grayish purple, which wasn't terrible, but this is for my son. I figured he didn't want purple, so I was trying to be a little more cautious of where those 2 colors would meet. And trying to kind of limit that, almost make it to where they would fade into white where they met, if that makes any sense. So I'm just going to stencil this on and do so until I get the ink built up in the saturation that I like, and then I will move on to the next card. Once I did have some of that ink blended through the stencil like I wanted, I did go back with those same colors and in the same areas just apply some more ink, just so that it wasn't such a stark contrast between the background and those hearts. So that's kind of what I'm left with. This isn't my favorite ink blending that I've done, but it'll do. So I think once we get the shaker bits in it, it looks a lot better. But I do prefer the one for my daughter, just because those are more my colors, more the colors that I like. So this is Blush and Iris from Simon Says Stamp, their Positively Saturated line, and this is going to be just a pink and a purple for my daughter's card. And I'm going to do the same exact process, just stencil in 3 spots the colors just to try to give some variation, build up the saturation like I like, and then go back and add in just a little bit more ink blending to the background just so that it isn't so stark white. So there's that one all done. What I have here is just some recycled packaging. This is just the sleeve that a stamp set came in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over these card front panels. These are slightly, and I mean slightly, smaller than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I wanted this to be a full panel shaker card when this was all said and done. And so it's like a 1/16 of an inch smaller in both directions. Just because once you get kind of the acetate and all the goodies all around it, it almost bulks it up. And so I have discovered, for me anyway, when I make them 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 straight on, that they kind of spill over the edges of the card. And so if I just make them a hair smaller, I have better luck with a full panel shaker. So what I'm doing is I am flipping this over and adding double-sided tape. You need to do tape here. I don't recommend a wet glue. You'll have to sit here and hold it. And it just doesn't adhere to this packaging very well. So I applied that to all 4 sides of the back of this card panel. And then I have some sequins for my stash. These are just purchased from Amazon. I have a pink and a purple that I felt matched really well. They look almost blue in the video, but they are more purple in real life. And I am peeling off the backer on all 4 sides. Really, you should just do 3 sides. Because when you adhere it down and fold over the pieces of this recycled packaging, you need to leave a pocket open or an edge open so that you can add your shaker bits, or to quote Carissa Riley, your shaker guts inside. So I'm just making sure that I've got enough room. I left about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch on each side. You probably don't need quite that much space, but I like to err on the side of caution just because I don't always get things lined up very straight. So all I'm doing is rolling over and sticking down 3 sides. Like I said, you need to have a pocket so that you can add your shaker goodies inside. I chose sequins today just because I have gobs of them in my stash, but you could use glitter, you could use seed beads, you could use, I actually have some like mini glass beads from, I think I got them at Dollar Tree. You could put pretty much whatever you want inside. You could put die cuts in there, whatever you wanted. I did see that I didn't line this side up very well, and so I'm just peeling that off and trying to get that a little more snug. You don't want it super tight, but you also don't want it super loose, so there's kind of a happy medium between how you want to wrap this around and not. So I'm just going to readjust that. I noticed that the bottom side wasn't sitting very straight either, so I'm just readjusting it until I can get more of a snug fit all the way around. I added a lot of sequins to my shakers. You don't have to add nearly this many, and you could add just one color. You could add several colors. I know lots of companies have like mixes. I don't really have any sequin mixes. I have a tendency to have to make my own, and like I said, I have gobs of these sequins in my stash, so you know, using quite a bit for these cards was not a problem. So now that I have enough in my shaker, I'm going to fold over that final edge. And just to take off some of the bulk, I do go and trim off the corners because they do have a tendency to have like a little bit of a flap there. So I do go back and trim off those edges. So as you can see that I have a good amount of shaker bits in there. They shake around really easily. Again, you didn't have to add nearly that many, but I liked that amount. So this is the one for my son. I was trying to find a color of sequin in my stash that matched that Aegean. I was unsuccessful, so I just went with a white, kind of iridescent, and then a red. Again, this is probably because this is not kind of my color that I gravitate to, but I really do like my daughter's card colors. Acetate, adhering this plastic down to, this non-porous surface to a porous surface can be kind of tricky. So how I do it is I just use that same adhesive that I use to attach the edges of the shaker. I just repeat that all over the back. I put 5-6 strips or so on the back of this, and I will peel that off and attach that to the back of the card base. My card bases today are from Simon Says Stamp and from DieCutsLovePaper off of Etsy. I believe this purple one is from her, and then the red is from Simon. And I'm just adhering those down, and I will repeat that for the other card. Here I have some colored cardstock. This is from Paper Studio. I'm, again, a non-porous surface to a porous surface. I find that this double-sided tape works best. This double-sided tape is actually from Amazon also. It's very cost-effective and works very well. So I just put 3 strips on each of those, and then I'm going to stamp my sentiment. In hindsight, I probably should have heat embossed this sentiment, but I was lazy, didn't feel like getting out my embossing powder, in full disclosure, but that probably would have looked better. The sentiments, once they're dry, they are legible, but they are not like super even. So if you are looking for more of a distressed look, then don't heat emboss it. If you want it to be more crisp and clear, you would want it to heat emboss this sentiment. The sentiment comes from a Simon Says Stamp Beautiful Friend. That is where this I Love You comes from. I thought that fit nicely inside this heart. And so I'm going to stamp that in the white on both of these hearts. I stamped 4-5 times, something like that, just trying to get like a very solid image. Again, if you were going to heat emboss this, you would probably get away with stamping it maybe once or twice, depending on how juicy your pad is. This is Hero Art's Unicorn White Pigment ink. And depending on how juicy your pad is, you may not even have to stamp it twice. You could probably stamp it once and then heat emboss with it. I have discovered when I do white heat embossing, if I stamp in this unicorn white ink, it just gives me a more solid heat embossing finish. But for today, like I said, I was lazy, didn't feel like getting all that stuff out, so I did stamp this several times, and they still look beautiful. They just have more of a, I would say, distressed look to them as opposed to a very crisp, clear image. I took off the backer. This ink does stay wet for a while, so I was very careful not to touch it so I didn't smear it. And then I'm just going to take off the backer and adhere those down, and then that is it. That is the card for today. So thank you so much. Hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day if you celebrate that. And I hope you will come back and see me next time. Until then, we will see you next time.